Okay, so get this. Imagine you're on an archaeological dig, like just routine stuff, before construction starts. And boom, you stumble on this pit.
Oh, wow.
And it's deep, like 13 feet deep. And it is crammed with thousands of bones.
Thousands.
Thousands. But not just any bones. We're talking human and animal remains all mixed together.
That's a little creepy. What's the story there?
Well, that's what we're going to find out. It might point to some Roman-era rituals, possibly even with a dash of human sacrifice.
Oh, my.
Yeah, this is the scene in Yule, England, and we're going to deep dive into an article from National Geographic about this incredible discovery. So are you ready to jump into life in Roman Britain?
I'm so ready. Let's do it.
Buckle up, because you might be surprised by just how much these practices blend Roman and British traditions.
Yeah, it really does challenge our assumptions about how cultures interact, especially during a conquest. We often think of Romanization as like a one-way street, but the Yule site paints a much more complex picture.
Okay, so let's set the scene a bit more. This isn't just a little pit. This is a huge bone pit.
Huge, huh?
Over 11,400 bone fragments, to be precise. This wasn't just someone tossing out leftovers from dinner. This was an intentional act.
Oh, for sure.
And the dating puts it right in the early Roman period of Britain, between 77 and 118 AD.
So right after the Romans marched in and took over.
Yeah, just a few decades after the conquest.
Imagine the tension, the uncertainty, the clash of cultures as these two worlds collided.
And this bone pit, it's like a frozen picture, a snapshot of that clash.
Yeah, I like that.
So let's zoom in on that snapshot. What exactly are we seeing? Tell me about the bones themselves.
Okay, well, first you've got the human remains, at least 21 individuals. And here's the interesting part. They're buried in groups of 5. And each group represents different stages of life.
Like ages.
Yeah, like a baby, a child, a teenager, and 2 adults. And that grouping by age, that's a key detail. It could be linked to life cycles and to fertility,
Oh, I see. So it's not just random bodies. It's patterned, deliberate, almost like they're trying to show the whole human experience from birth to death.
Exactly. Now, on top of the human remains, you have animal bones. A ton of them.
How many are we talking?
Try 282 skeletons. And dogs are the most common. Many look to be small lap dogs. Those are often associated with Roman culture. But here's where it gets really interesting. They also found a dog penis bone, a baculum.
Wait, hold on. A dog penis bone? What's so special about that?
Well, in Roman culture, they saw the baculum as a good luck charm, a symbol of fertility and protection against evil.
Oh, interesting.
And get this. This specific baculum might have even been painted red with ochre.
Isn't that another Roman good luck symbol?
It is.
Okay, so we've got these groups of human remains. They're laid out to represent the different stages of life. We've got tons of dogs, a dog penis bone, possibly painted red for good luck. Oh, and they found charred barley, too.
Right, which was a local crop.
Starting to feel like a recipe for some kind of ancient ritual, isn't it?
It definitely points in that direction. And to add to that, they found fetal and baby horse remains.
Horses?
Yeah, and horses usually give birth in the spring, so that might mean the ritual had a seasonal connection, too.
Okay, now this is where it gets exciting. A possible springtime fertility ritual. And it looks like it mixes Roman and British elements. But why so many dogs? What's the connection there?
Well, dogs often pop up in Roman art and mythology, usually with fertility goddesses.
Ah, okay.
They were seen as protectors of women and children. So their presence in this ritual might symbolize a desire for abundance, lots of crops and lots of children.
The article calls this a springtime fertility ritual. And you've already mentioned some evidence that supports that. But is there anything else that points to this being a ritual? Like, what about how the bones were arranged or how they were treated? Any clues there?
Oh, absolutely. Remember how the human remains were in those groups? Well, there's also signs that some of the bones were handled and moved around after death.
Hold on, so they were messing with the bones even after death?
It seems that way. And that kind of thing isn't typical of Roman burials. Yeah, it suggests a deeper connection to the dead, like a sense of reverence, maybe even an attempt to appease or communicate with the spirits.
It's not just a body in the ground. There's more to it.
Yeah, it hints at a whole belief system that goes beyond the physical world, where the living and the dead can still interact.
That's fascinating. It really makes you think about death differently. It's not just an ending. It's part of a bigger cycle. Like, it's all connected, life and death and the natural world.
Exactly. And this brings us back to those cultural influences. The Romans had rituals and ceremonies, for sure, but they usually had pretty standard ways of burying people.
Right.
This messing with the remains after death. That points to something more, well, local, something from the time before the Romans.
So I've got this blend of Roman and British elements. It's like a cultural mashup. It really changes how we think about Romanization, doesn't it?
It really does. It challenges this idea that Romans just came in and forced their culture on everyone. It's more like a back and forth, a mixing of traditions and beliefs and ways of doing things.
Speaking of traditions, let's talk about the elephant in the room, or I guess the dog in the room. The article mentions human sacrifice. And that wasn't really a Roman thing, was it?
Officially, no. Roman writers often talked about human sacrifice like it was barbaric, especially among the Britons. But, history isn't always so clear-cut.
Right.
There are some accounts that suggest human sacrifice did happen in Britain before the Romans arrived.
So maybe the Romans weren't totally right about that. Maybe it was more common than they said, and maybe they even used that to justify taking over Britain.
It's possible. It would have been a pretty easy way to make the Britons look like savages.
Yeah.
Like they needed the Romans to, civilize them.
But the tests on the human bones from Ewell show they were local Britons, not Roman settlers. Okay, so it does seem more like something carried over from before the Romans. But then how do we explain all the Roman stuff we've talked about? The lapdogs, the red baculum, the connection to Roman goddesses. How do those pieces fit in?
That's what's so cool about archaeology. It's not always simple. It's like you get all these pieces and you have to figure out how they fit together.
Like a puzzle.
Exactly. And in this case, the puzzle is telling us about cultural exchange, about adaptation, maybe even a little bit of resistance.
So these Britons are taking Roman stuff and mixing it into their own beliefs and practices, maybe as a way to deal with this new world order.
Yeah, it's this complex dance of power and identity. And don't forget the Ewell site. It represents a community in transition. It's stuck between two worlds and trying to figure out how to move forward.
So it's like they're making their own hybrid culture, taking from their own history and from the Romans. It's a really cool example of how cultures don't just clash. They blend together and change because of each other.
Precisely. The Ewell site isn't just about bones. It's about how strong human culture is, how adaptable belief systems are. It shows how tradition can survive, even when things change.
And beyond the cultural stuff, what about the ritual itself? Was it all just about making sure the crops grew well? Or was there more to it? I mean, what were these people hoping to get out of all these rituals?
That's a really good question. And, scholars are still debating that. Some think that these kinds of rituals weren't just about crops and fertility. They were also about keeping society in order, strengthening the community, and maybe even dealing with fears of the unknown.
That makes sense. Imagine the fear and uncertainty during those first years of Roman rule. Those rituals, even if they seem strange to us now, they might have helped people deal with their fears. They might have helped people feel stable in a world that was totally upside down.
Absolutely. Rituals can give you a sense of control, of predictability. You feel connected to something bigger than yourself. And when everything's changing, those things become super important.
And these rituals weren't just for a select few. It was probably the whole community doing them. It wasn't just a religious thing. It was a shared experience that brought everyone together.
Right. It made their bonds stronger. It reminded them of who they were as a group.
And that collective action, that shared experience, that can be incredibly powerful. It goes beyond individual differences. It creates a sense of unity and belonging. It helps communities make it through tough times.
It's a powerful reminder that even with conquest and cultural change, people find ways to hold on to their communities, their traditions, and their sense of self.
It makes you think about the rituals we have in our own lives, doesn't it? I mean, we might not be sacrificing animals or burying them with huge ceremonies, but we still have our own ways of marking big moments, of trying to find meaning, of connecting with each other.
Oh, totally. Think about birthdays, holidays, even those simple things you do every day. There are all kinds of rituals that help us get through life, both as individuals and as a group, They give us structure, a sense of continuity, a feeling of belonging.
And they connect us to the past. I mean, here we are centuries later, and we're still fascinated by these ancient rituals, still trying to figure out what they meant.
Okay.
It's like we're reaching back through time, trying to understand the hopes and fears and beliefs of people who lived so long ago.
It is a good reminder that we're part of something bigger. A long line of human experience stretching back thousands of years. And even if our rituals change, the reasons behind them, that need for connection, for meaning, to understand things, those never go away.
So besides giving us this peek into Roman Britain, what can we take away from this? What does it tell us about ourselves, about the world we live in today?
For me, it really shows how important it is to understand different cultures. The Yule site reminds us that cultures are like fluid. They're always changing, they mix together, they evolve.
Right.
And sometimes that process can be messy, even violent. But it also creates something new, something unique.
It challenges that idea of one big dominant culture. Instead, you see this world where different groups are constantly bumping into each other, sharing ideas, and changing because of it.
Exactly, and it makes us question what we think we know. We often picture the Roman Empire as this big, powerful thing that controlled everything. But the Yule site shows that even when they were at their strongest, people were still pushing back, adapting Roman ways to fit their own needs.
So there's always more to the story than we think. And understanding those different sides is really important if we want to understand history and even our own present.
Absolutely. And it's not just about Romans against Britons. It's about people trying to figure out the world, trying to find where they fit in, especially when society is changing, and using whatever they have to do it.
And sometimes whatever they have means mixing things that don't seem like they go together, creating something totally new.
Exactly. And that's a story that makes sense across time and cultures. It's a story about how tough humans are, about adapting, and at the end of the day, about how powerful culture really is.
And even though we've learned so much, this discovery still feels mysterious. We can look at the bones, study the artifacts, put the pieces together, but the real reason behind that Yule bone pit, that might always be a secret, which in a way makes it even more fascinating, don't you think?
Oh, for sure. It gets our brains going. It makes us use our imaginations. And it reminds us that there's always more to learn, more to find, more to understand about ourselves and this world.
So if you had a time machine and could go back and ask the people who made this bone pit one question, what would it be? What secrets do you think are still buried out there, just waiting for us to find them? Tell us what you think on social media. We'd love to hear your theories. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Roman Britain. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking those questions, and keep digging deeper.